Hey everyone, Ethan here from Extreme RC 4x4. Hope everyone is doing well. As you can see, I'm going to be talking about the Gatekeeper today. I did finish this up just right now. Well, it's not really finished. This is as far as I've gotten at this point. I have tried filming this video a couple times, but I did just finish the electronics, so I figure might as well do it now instead of having to update later. So the Gatekeeper build, simple rundown. This is basically an Element Enduro chassis, just a builder's kit version. You don't get tires, wheels, the pinion gear, or electronics. Pretty basic stuff with builder's kits. I just wasn't expecting to be missing the pinion gear, and a lot of these kits still come with tires. I'm actually kind of happy that it didn't come with tires, just because it helps me kind of thin out my stash of tires. I'm sure there's some of you that also have piles of tires laying around, but I'm really picky about it, so I usually go through a couple sets of tires where I find what I really like on something. So anyways, these are Pitbull growlers. They're a 4.75 outer diameter and a 1.9 size wheel. I was originally thinking maybe I'd print out some 2.2 wheels for them, but I'm glad I just went with some 1.9s because I think they look really good. So if you missed that, yes, these are 3D printed wheels. Just another way for me to justify owning a 3D printer, and saves me a little bit of money, I guess. Little disclaimer, this is not stock, just because I can't leave anything alone, but I will point out that stuff that has changed. So the big thing with the Gatekeeper is it has tons of upgrades to it from Element. You're going to see hard plastics, which are these kind of gray. You can tell they're not a black plastic like the transmission is a black plastic, the cage is a black plastic. So I'll talk about the cage a second, and then we'll pull it off and talk about the frame. So everything as far as the roll cage, there's just a lot of screws with it. My dad actually put this together. We did the build together instead of me doing this one on camera, which was fun. It was good to do that. But as far as the cage goes, it's really pretty narrow because we are still on a standard scale vehicle axle width. This is not like Wraith width axles, so if that gives you any kind of idea, it's almost between the tires, but not quite. It is on a hinging body system, and it is pretty tight. It actually hangs underneath of these side trays, so when you pull it off, it has to kind of flex around those. It only has 2 body pins in the back here, which is super nice, and they have screw holes in the front because, and this body actually has screw holes in the front because it goes in the front bumper mount, but I use some short screws right there so that I can slide those pegs out. This way the cage is easily removable to work on it. That's one of the huge things I like about this truck, is that you get the cage, but it's also very easy to remove. So with these standard ladder frame chassis like this, you can just take this cage off in no time at all and then have this bare bones frame to work on. One of the huge things for me is the ease of working on your truck, is maintenance, not necessarily modifications, that comes along with having a ladder frame. I know a lot of people will say it'd be cooler to have a full kind of tube chassis. Yes, it's cool. It's not so cool when you have to drop the skid plate out to work on the transmission, all this other stuff that comes along with it, because once you drop that skid plate out, you have all the links loose. Long story short, I'm really glad they did this on a scale truck chassis. It's just huge benefits to that, especially working on it, having this cage come off. Even if you had those 2 screws in there, it would take hardly any time to come off. But the science behind that is I'll just slide those pegs in to the front bumper mount, and then when you lock it down, these won't allow the body to slide forward and come out of those. So that right there, easy to come off. So anyways, as I was saying before, I was talking about the cage. Lots of upgrades. We get hard plastics in the shock towers, these small running boards kind of deals, but they're also a mount for the trailing arms. One of the key features of the Element Enduro Gatekeeper, sorry, kind of a mouthful. All the cross members are hard plastic, the axle housings, the front C-hubs, and the knuckles are as well. So that's hard plastics for you. I'm going to talk about the rear suspension first, what we got going on. Also have some special things going on in the front. Sorry if you guys catch a glimpse of some of the other stuff that's kind of going on in the shop right now. It's just, this is what I have to work with, so I hope you don't mind seeing some of my extra crap around. So, as far as the rear goes, trailing arm suspension, this is unique in the scale truck world to be offered on a truck from the factory. I do sell the trailing arm kit for the Element Enduro if you need one for a 12.3 inch wheelbase. This is a 12.8 inch wheelbase, also pretty unique of them to go a half inch longer than most trail trucks. The only other one I know of is the Traxxas GRX4 Defender you can get in that wheelbase, as well as the SCX 10.3 Gladiator, which is almost 14 inches, I think. So basically, if you don't understand what trailing arms do, it'll because of geometry, it gets you additional travel out of the same size shock. So they're going for kind of a long travel setup here. When you do that, though, there's a lot of leverage on the shock. So we have an anti-sway bar here, which an anti-sway bar prevents the truck from flexing, so it's fighting me as I try to flex it out, whereas you don't have that in the front. Not sure what else comes along with that at all. It mounts on the outside of the link mounts, just like mine does. My kit does, if you're familiar with it. If not, definitely check it out. So I think that pretty much sums it up in the rear. All the link mounting points have been moved back, though, so these are some short links in comparison to the other ones, but it also works with the short length of these trailing arms. The trailing arms are probably an inch or an inch and a half shorter than axial Yeti length trailing arms, which is what I use. Just got our body pins. They're screwed in from the bottom side here, so you could remove those if you really wanted to. If you wanted to put this on a regular Element Enduro frame, or the cage at least, you would need at least these shock towers, which is probably going to lead you to needing this suspension just because of how the cage is molded around them. Something I noticed is the frame has these adjustable holes in the back. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I can't remember if my Trail Runner has that as well, or if I just haven't messed with that as much to where I can't remember. So it might be a new adjustable thing, but can't confirm that. Front suspension. Some of the cool things we see is these high clearance links. They're bent to offer you greater clearance. An upgrade like that is becoming pretty common in the RC world. You see them putting these links on Element Enduros a lot, so very cool. You know, Element is listening, and that's one thing I really like about the Element brand. Seems like they're listening to customers and doing cool, innovative things like this. Another thing that Element has always done is this behind the axle steering. So the tie rod that joins your two knuckles is behind the axle, and the front steering link is still in its normal position. I'm sure just to make it easy to work on, if you put that steering link in the back, we could get some pretty interesting pains there, I guess. Another big upgrade is this aluminum track bar mount, which is adjustable 3 different heights. So you can use that to get your geometry perfect so that you don't get any bump steer. Also, I have been told it's a weak point on the factory truck, but this is my first Element Enduro front solid axle rig. I have the Trail Runner, which has the IFS in the front. If you are curious, the IFS will work on this truck because it's essentially the same chassis. So simply put, that is why it still works. It's the same frame. There's no real issues with it. It would have been cool to see the IFS along with the trailing arm suspension. I have a feeling that we might see that down the road, just because trailing arms and the IFS are unique to Element as far as suspension system goes, just because nobody else has really done that yet, at least at a production level. As I said, I have done trailing arms. A few different companies have done a front independent suspension, so anyways, some things that I did have to do is the pinion gear that I ended up getting seems to be rubbing on this cover, and I went through all this work to make everything look really nice. So all I did was pop some of the spacers off the parts trees and then get some longer screws, so this cover is spaced off just slightly, and now it won't rub, which is good. That's what I wanted. I don't want it to rub. So now we'll talk about some more of the modifications I've done. That's just pretty basic, but major thing I've done is this truck comes with a battery tray right here that goes lengthwise for shorty batteries. There is no way to mount a full-size pack in this truck from the factory that I have been able to find. You can put a battery tray on this cross member here between the shock towers, because this is the same bolt pattern as the battery tray. However, you can't fit the big battery tray in there, and I'm kind of behind the times, I guess. I only have big battery packs. I mean, I have a couple really small battery packs, but I prefer to run a full-size pack just for run time. I'm not really competing with these too much anymore, especially with our current COVID situation, so a full-size pack is kind of the answer for me. But in order to do that, what I needed to do was get rid of the servo mount, because I wanted to mount the battery as low as possible. Center of gravity is a big deal these days. So what I did is get rid of that battery tray, not the battery tray, the servo mount that also had the flat plate on it. I'm sure you guys can catch it in some other people's videos. I'm just trying to show my truck off. So we have this bent piece of 1/8 inch aluminum that holds the battery in it. There's no stop on the front of this. It just, the battery hits the front bumper mount, so no reason to have one there, but I do have one on the back that will keep the battery from sliding backwards into the transmission if you were to run it the opposite way and have the spurgy there. I'm not sure the transmission will fit the other way, but something to consider, I guess. And then along with that, I didn't want to just cut the servo mount in half and then have the servo being able to leverage on the frame like that. So what I have is this plate right here that the servo mounts to, but it also is bent so that it goes into the frame right there. You're probably wondering where it's bent. It is bent at the backside. You can barely see it because it's inside the frame rail. Beautiful engineering by myself, so that's why you can't see that. One of my biggest pet peeves with this in the design is that the aluminum track bar mount, these screws go through the frame to some regular steel nuts. They're not even lock nuts. My problem with that is not really a huge deal, but when you have the servo mount in place here, there's no way to access these nuts, and if you wanted to take this off, you wouldn't be able to do that without removing the entire servo cross member. So I really just think that they could have added these extra holes into that servo cross member, and it would have been a lot easier for everybody. Not really easier, but it would have been a smarter solution, in my opinion. That's the only real lack of engineering that I've been able to find on this so far. I haven't driven it yet, but that is the biggest thing that I don't like yet. I should probably tidy this up a little bit, but I do have a little stubby antenna on it. My first truck with an antenna on it for a while, because this has no radio box. It would have been cool to see them do a radio box. I guess that's one other thing. Let me get this back in place, see if I can do it with one hand. Oh, lucky day, I guess. Haven't been able to do that yet. So, in the back here we have this fuel cell, but the fuel cell is part of the roll cage. So if you really like servo extensions, you might be able to get away with it, because there's about a foot probably to that hinge, plus to all your other electronics. So if you really like servo extensions, you can probably do it, but most of us don't like them that much. So it would have been really cool to see this fuel cell as a part of the frame, and then have this cage fall down around it, just like we see it fall around the shock hoops. So that could have been a major improvement, just because of the general lack of space to mount electronics in here. As you can see, my ESC barely fits on the width of these running boards, and I even have additional space on this aluminum tray. So if you are wondering, the aluminum parts are available on my website, extremrc4x4.com. For this is the only way I've been able to find to fit a full-sized lipo inside of here. As you can see, it does sit under the cage. That's another reason why I had to drop it down below the frame, is to fit underneath of the cage. Let's talk about tire size. If you're thinking about tires for this, I will say that even flexing it out on the bench, these 4.75 tires do rub the cage, so not majorly, but they do touch it. So I would say a 4.75 is about the tire size that they were marketing this truck for. I think it would fall into class 2, but I'm not totally certain. Another cool touch I just remembered is that the Gatekeeper also comes with a metal servo horn for it. It's a 25 tooth. It doesn't fit my servo, but it's cool they put it in there. I guess if you're ordering electronics, you could order some that come with a 25 tooth servo horn. For this build, I just have a Tiken FXR, which is brand new. I just had it in the box for a while, I guess. And then this is some old motor that I had in my stash. It's a Tiken 35 turn as well, which is probably going to get upgraded at some point, because even just driving this around is kind of slow. But all these element trucks must have a ton of gearing in them, because they're all really slow, in my opinion. And I put a 22 tooth pinion in this gearbox. So if you're curious, that's about as big of a pinion as I'm willing to put in there. There's really not enough adjustment for anything larger than that, in my opinion at least. But just a basic high-tech waterproof servo, my 5,000 pack LiPo battery, TPN FXR ESC combo 35 turn motor. Hope you like my wiring. I've really been enjoying soldering lately, so I do get pretty clean with it. And of course, I had to cheap out somewhere, so I have this El Cheapo original axial RTR radio, and if I shut it off, it'll probably go shooting off of the workbench, but I'll try not to do that. I'll probably do it at some point, but I guess the only major thing missing at this point is the roof, the hood, the side panels, and it also has an interior. So not really an interior, but what I would call a half interior, where it just kind of sits in here, and then you get the two guys with the helmets and a dash. So perfect interior in my opinion, a good combination of scale as well as functionality, so you don't have to modify anything under here to make that interior work. Anyways guys, I thought I would just give you a quick introduction to the Gatekeeper. Chances are I'm going to try to drive this now that I have the remote set up. Not really decided on a color. I don't really enjoy painting all that much, so it might be a little while before I get some body panels painted up for it, especially now that we're coming into the colder months. So alright guys, I'm going to try to splice this quick clip into the video because I know there's some things I forgot to talk about already. Hopefully these are the last things, but I just want to say that the shocks that come in this kit are amazing. Element shocks seem to be super nice. These are bronze and they're incredibly lightweight. Just the shock body when you're building them, it blew my mind how light it is. The only trouble I had is there's supposed to be some O-rings inside of these black spring adjustment collars, which are also aluminum, I believe. So that's super nice to see. Normally see plastic and they're really hard to thread on the shock bodies, so that was a really nice touch. I don't think they're leaking at all yet. I'm not sure if they will or not, but the shock oil that they include in the kit was enough to fill them all up, and they seem super smooth so far, so can't wait to get them out on the trail and try it. Nothing says quality like a good set of shocks, especially when they can be cheaped out on so easily. The other thing is, I'm sure this is common knowledge by now, but the Element Enduro transmission does have overdrive in it, or has an option for overdrive. You get the gears to do a mild overdrive, which is like the option 2, I think, and then option 3 is what I went with. Don't quote me on this, but I put in the maximum overdrive I could into this truck. So that being said, it does turn pretty tight for a 12.8-inch wheelbase. I was just driving it around on the floor. I was pretty impressed with it. You do get really good steering angle out of this front axle though, but I'm sure the overdrive also plays a major point to that, just because it's spinning the front wheels faster than the back wheels. So that's another cool thing that you get with an Element Enduro. And one last upgrade that I forgot about is that there is metal hexes on these axles that are included from the factory. Very cool to see. I would like eventually Element to go to a style where you have the pin that has the threads on it into the axle, unlike the pin and then you put the hex over it and then the grub screw to lock it down. I think that's really kind of an old style. The first truck to use the hexes with the pin that has the threads on it into the axle shaft, I believe, was the Vetera Ascender, and that probably sounds ancient to a lot of you guys that know what that is, but it is, and I'm surprised not just Element but other RC companies haven't gone to that style of method of attaching the hexes yet. I personally believe it's way better because there's no grub screws that will eventually loosen or strip out, as well as no pins in the axles. You just have the single. So that, in my opinion, would be a major upgrade for a lot of RC companies to do, not just Element, but I think that's it. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing the Gatekeeper modifications I've done so far and how I have it set up, along with some of my thoughts on it. But anyways, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.